Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and I hope all of you are having a fantastic day. It is Friday, and hopefully everyone out there is ready for the weekend. I know I am. And we're ready for another Computer America before we head off, though. So today on the show, we had a guest. Some rescheduling happened. The guest that was supposed to be on today will in fact be on in a couple of weeks. So if you are a Mac user out there and you ever used a program known as Parallels, which allows you to run, of course, your favorite Mac environment, but Windows on top of it, then you're really going to want to tune in here in the next couple of weeks as we get that settled out. Because they just released a new version and we would really like to get them on. It's going to be a lot of fun. And in the meantime, though, we have an entire show dedicated to computer and technology news, and that works very well for me because I really do enjoy, catching up on the news, making sure that we head into the weekend knowing everything that we need to know, and then starting fresh on Monday. And by the way, next Monday's guest is also going to be a very interesting conversation. I just want to plug that one real quick as well. If you were on the fence about checking that out, then on Monday we are going to have a guest where he's a professional gamer. He competes in tournaments, and I believe he live streams as well for playing Madden. And there was that unfortunate shooting that happened, I believe, in Jacksonville or Tampa Bay. Either Jacksonville or Tampa, of course, get that right. But there was the unfortunate shooting at the Madden gaming tournament. And he was one of the gentlemen there, very heroically used himself to protect others there at the event when the shooting started breaking out. And we're going to talk to him, and we're going to talk about that event and the future of these kinds of events. And it's going to be a very interesting conversation. So be sure to tune in Monday for that one. All right. All of that, let's go ahead and do the basics, and then we'll get into computer and technology news. And yes, all the news that we think you should know. So a couple of things, computeramerica.com, that's everything from the show notes, that will have all the links, articles, videos, any topics that we discussed today will be in the show notes in one place. So that if you are busy, if your hands are tied, then don't worry, we got you covered right there at our website. Also, while you're there, check out the social media contest brought to you by Logitech, as well as the live video feed, which you can also find at twitch.tv/Computer America, along with the chat room if you feel so inclined as to, have a conversation with us and enjoy our company. If you are listening to this time shifted, then just know that if you ever want to, get in here, talk with us, and have a good time, that's 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. We're always in there. Okay, that being said, let's go ahead, computer and technology news, and let's go ahead and play our jingle and get started. Here we go. There we have it. Let's go ahead and get started. So some of the stories from yesterday, we had a very interesting conversation, but of course that led to only a couple of minutes to do computer and technology news. So we're going to cover some that are, I know, atrociously about 24 hours old. It's a sad day, but I really do find a couple of these very interesting. And this one in particular, because I play a lot of video games. It's some people bike ride, some people mountain climb, some people do have a life, others play video games. And, I have been known to go on benders, and the amount of time that I put into games is very dependent, of course, on my responsibilities. And sometimes I don't have many responsibilities, and I have a lot of time for video games. I'm not saying that I'm not advocating that anyone out there drop what they're doing, stop what they need to do, and play as much video games as possible. But it happens. There are times when you have nothing better to do but play video games. Well, that all works out. I believe that's a very natural, kind of way to look at it. But then there are others who will sacrifice friends, families, relationships, jobs, prospects, and more for the sake of video games. And that can be a problem. And that's not just a problem in Western countries, but there's a company, we've talked about them before, they own a lot of property in video games, and they seem pretty concerned about how often certain members of their audience actually spend playing their games. That's why Tencent, they are a large gaming conglomerate from China. Tencent will require players to put their real names in, and that will allow them to limit playtime. So when you create an account, and for a lot of games here over in America and Europe and other places, they ask for your name, and they're never really going to double check. If you want to put your name as John Hancock, then for any video game publisher out there cares, your name is John Hancock. That's what you got. In China, things are a little bit different, and especially in places like Japan and South Korea as well. A lot of video games and a lot of interactions with other people, they're actually pretty closely monitored by the government, especially in China, where they have a very keen interest on monitoring their citizens. Anything that you do online, and a lot of things you do online, are strictly tied to you personally. You have to put in what amounts to a driver's license or or a social security number or some kind of very personal identifier to make any kind of an account with a video game company that you play online. So I know this is the case in South Korea, they want to keep others from, kind of invading their game space. And you have to have like a worker's ID to even make an account with certain game companies. It's a very different philosophy than what we have here. Here, if you want to, fake a name, fake an identity, they don't care. They sell you the game, and you're good to go. Here, not the case, and looks like they're going to take it a step further and track how much time you actually play. So this is an article from Motherboard saying that starting September 15th, China's largest gaming company, Tencent, will require players to use their real names when logging into Honor of Kings, which is a popular League of Legends style game. That would be something akin to a multi-online battle arena kind of deal. And according to Beijing, China has a gaming problem. The Chinese government has long sought to curb what it sees as gaming addiction among its population, especially its youth. It already restricts game playtime for people under the age of 18 in what can come to market, and runs military-style boot camps to break gamers of their addiction. Like I said, very different philosophy. Just recently, gaming addiction was only added to kind of our lexicon over the past couple of months. Now, if you look at China, they see video games and how much people are putting into them, and they say that's not healthy. That's not our ideals. hence the boot camp. Tencent said it planned to roll out this Beijing-backed restriction to its other games later, saying that through these measures, Tencent hopes to continue to better guide underage players to game sensibly. Now, of course, you'd think that would come through some kind of advocacy program that would come through, teaching the pros and cons, but no, this is looking to be something more akin to, hey, you're playing too much. We said so. That's the end of it. You're not allowed to play anymore. Let's get into what they believe to be what too much actually is. The government database is new, but Tencent has a history of going along with the Beijing's paranoia about video games and its demands from manufacturers. Since July 2017, Tencent has restricted the playtime of users under 12 to 1 hour a day. So if you are under the age of 12, you get 1 hour of video game time. Kids aged 13 to 18 can only play 2 hours a day. I'm not saying that that's too much. Again, this is going to be very subjective. The science on all of this is not very well researched. There are definitely links, and from a very from a very basic instinct, like if you don't play video games, and trust me, the people making these laws are not the people who play video games. If you don't play video games, 2 hours a day seems like more than enough to do anything that you want to do in a video game. I think that number, especially for the 13 to 18 age range, that number is drastically lower than what we're seeing in the real world. So the author says, as a gamer, that makes my skin crawl, saying that I don't know what I would have done with my lazy 15-year-old self if I couldn't play EverQuest all weekend long. Gaming addiction is a serious problem, and the news is filled with accounts of gamers who unfortunately pass away through a marathon session, but those tragedies make the news because they're rare. It's not the government's place to decide who gets to do what. Of course, the author writes this, and then he writes that about the Chinese government, though. And when he says that it's not the government's place to decide who gets to do what, that is exactly what the government is there to do in China. And especially with Tencent, who has a lot of ties with the Chinese government. And actually, let's go ahead and read this comment from the chat room. When the government thinks it knows better than the parents, and he said that's a personal responsibility issue. Again, this is a philosophy difference between Western and Eastern countries. We're seeing this not just in China, but also in South Korea and in Japan and other Southeast Asian countries. It's something that a lot of these countries really do think that it's an epidemic. It's a true health problem. And just like many other health problems, they're going to do sweeping reforms, and they're going to overact to a very extreme. And you could look at this through any kind of like air quality, green energy. You can look at this through technology and poverty and things like that. A lot of policies are very reactive, and they are not based on real world data. They're based on what they feel is a proper response. And as I said, as someone who really believe, like, they really don't play video games, they think this is okay. To say that it's not their responsibility completely denies the fact that, hey, the Chinese government has made it their responsibilities. So, yeah, hey, there you go. And trust me, I'm with him 2 hours a day and 1 hour a day, and then the government telling me what I kind of feel about this. I totally would not be comfortable with this. I think that 2 hours a day, really just doesn't conform with what a teenager nowadays is doing. If they aren't playing video games, then they're on their phone doing something else. Or if they aren't on their phone, it's not like if you take away video games, suddenly they're going to go do something productive as you see fit. It's not like they're going to go get a job, or it's not like they're going to go outside, work out, help an old lady across the street, start, doing whatever it is that you're hoping that these, 13 to 18-year-olds are going to do. taking away the video games is not magically going to flip that switch. So I'm against this, but you see where it is. Tencent is often targeted by regulators because its games are the most popular. Last year, the official newspaper of the Chinese Communist Party called Tencent's Honor of Kings poison and begged them not to commit evil. And by the way, not to commit evil, as in you've made a very good video game. Please stop doing that. Beijing has been signaling that more regulations were coming for weeks. Along with the real name requirement, the government has to approve new video games before they're released, saying that it stopped approving new games in the middle of August. I don't think that there's really going to be much of a backlash for not approving video games, but like I said, it's a very restrictive way to go about it. And if you really want to tick off that younger generation, then telling them, hey, you don't need that, that's a darn good way to really start harboring some of those ill thoughts. That, hey, who are you to tell me that this video game is bad for me? Saying that the new restrictions come on the heels of reports of Chinese children suffer from heightened levels of nearsightedness, a condition Beijing claims is caused by playing too much video games, which, has not been proven. Again, not a lot of this has been proven by fact, but it's a very reactionary take to it, and I just thought that was interesting because, hey, Tencent, they have a lot of sway in the video game industry. So there's that one. Again, that one was from yesterday. I really thought that was very interesting. Let's talk about something else. Let's go ahead and switch it up. Let's do something from today. Why don't we discuss? Okay, why don't we discuss this one? If you have a Mac, you may think ill-advisedly that you are completely resistant to the most basic forms of malware or any kind of security flaw. You think that Mac is much more contained and rigid than Windows would ever be. When really, that's not the case. For some reason, it got this sense of superiority because Mac was a very, very, very small segment of the overall computer population. When something has 90 to 95% control over computers, hence Windows XP, Windows 7, what have you, the people developing software to steal people's credit cards, browser histories, to steal data, that they're going to obviously code for people who are on the 90 to 95% of operating systems, as opposed to something that has a 2 to 5% market share depending on the temperature outside. That needs to kind of go away. Because we have this article here, this one from Engadget, saying that a top grossing Mac App Store a top-grossing Mac App Store app steals users' browsers' histories and sends them to a server in China. This is the problem. Android is full of a lot of apps that are very low quality, are very derivative of other apps already written on the Android platform, and they're written by people you've never heard of. In a lot of cases, just hoping that you'll accidentally download it as opposed to the one that you actually wanted or one that's actually well reviewed. And when they get on your phone, they will take things over. They'll throw up pop-up ads. They'll do any number of things to try to get money or data out of your system. That's Android. Apple really does a decent job of curating their app store, but as we've seen, it's not foolproof. And again, this is one of the top grossing apps in the App Store. This is called Adware Doctor. If you've ever used it, you might want to listen up. Adware Doctor is a top app in the Apple's Mac App Store, sitting at number 5 in the list of top paid apps and leading the list of top utility apps. And that's, of course, as of this writing. It says it's meant to prevent malware and malicious files from infecting your Mac and claims to be one of the best apps to do so. but unbeknownst to its users, it's stealing their browser history and downloading it to servers in China. Twitter user Privacy is First tweeted a video about the issue last month and then investigated it with a security researcher, Patrick Wardle. Wardle does a deep dive into how Adware Doctor works on his blog Objective-C, which you can check out here, where they have, of course, a link to it in the article itself. But essentially, the app sidesteps Apple's sandboxing feature and snags browser history from Chrome, Firefox, and Safari, saying that, quote, now an anti-malware or anti-adware tool is going to need legitimate access to users' files and directories, for example, to scan them for malicious code. However, once the user has clicked allow, since Adware Doctor requested permission for the user's home directory, it will have carte blanche access to the user's files. So yes, you'll be able to download and detect detect and clean adware, but also collect and exfiltrate any user files it chooses. Hey, this is certainly a possibility. You give it, very root access, which you have to do for a lot of security software, which, hey, a couple of years ago when we had an adware malware company on the show every other week, this was a much bigger deal. We made sure to get, companies on that were well reviewed, that were well trusted in the industry, because it may seem like a very routine thing, but it's kind of like, let's say a housekeeper. Cleaning, vacuuming your floors, doing the dishes, making the beds, very simple things. But what you're really giving access to is someone maybe even giving them a key to your front door, letting them in your house, and letting them kind of look around. Same thing with adware malware protection. They're going to, proverbially, there we go. They're going to do the virtual cleaning of the dishes, the virtual vacuuming of the floors. They're going to do the virtual making of the beds. But then you have to be really sure that they aren't going to then make off with, maybe a wallet on a dresser or something like that. Something very easy to snatch, and then you will never notice it's gone until much too late. So Wardle points out that the app is in violation of Apple's App Store rules and guidelines, but though he notified Apple of the issue a month ago, it's still available on the App Store, which is troubling to say the least. Stealing a user's browser history is a serious privacy issue and a rather messed up thing to do. He didn't use messed up, but you get my drift. It's a bad thing to do, and obviously if they're still doing it, I would not doubt that this is going to, if this app is going to go away. Obviously, we wouldn't be talking about this if this was an App Store app that was at the bottom of the barrel. If it was, number 100,000 out of 100,000, we wouldn't even discuss this. But because it is number 5 in overall paid apps, that's where it becomes important. And for anyone out there who uses, again, Adware Doctor, might want to double check and, clear your browser history. There you go. There's that one. Let's see. So a couple of other articles here, some new, some a day old. Why don't we go ahead and talk about, how about digital assistants? But not how you know them. Digital assistants are coming everywhere. They're being pushed by the likes of Google, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft. Everyone has one at some point. There was an article that we didn't do and that we're not going to do, but it referenced the fact that I believe Xbox is going to gain Alexa support. So Amazon or the Amazon Echo, just say Alexa. Alexa is going to be able to control your Xbox through spoken commands. If you had to connect, much the same way. Digital assistants are, I guess it's a pretty easy function because the technology is getting more robust as time goes on. It's a pretty easy thing to kind of swap from one to the other. How about a digital assistant for your car? And if you are buying a BMW, if you are dropping 30, 40, 50, $60,000 on a car, wouldn't you kind of expect it to have a digital assistant? I guess BMW said yes. And that's why, according to Mallory Locklear and Gadget, BMW will release its in-car voice-controlled assistant next year. There you have it. It can adjust settings and check on mechanical issues, which I think is pretty cool. Because a lot of a car, I don't think that driving a car is that complicated. It might be just something that, obviously, as someone who drives a lot and is around cars a lot, it doesn't seem like a very complicated thing to do. But for those who are maybe a little bit scatterbrained, or those who just simply never learned and don't bother to learn, having a digital assistant to tell you, hey, the oil, you need an oil change in a couple thousand miles, or you need to, check the tire, tire inflation, or some very basic things that could slip our mind. That's where a digital assistant can really shine. As well as, let's face it, hands-free navigation. The article, BMW unveiled its intelligent personal assistant at Techcrunch Disrupt today, which will give drivers voice control over their vehicle settings, alert them to issues, and let them check in on their car's health. Where they said it is scheduled to roll out in March of next year to all BMW models with the new BMW operating system 7, saying that, quote, the always on call technology platform is an intelligent digital character that responds to the prompt, "Hey BMW." So much like "Hey Siri" or "Hey Alexa" or "Hey Google," we now have "Hey BMW." It has the ability to serve the driver in a range of ways, from controlling the vehicle settings, navigation, and entertainment systems to explaining vehicle functions and even conducting a conversation. They said that if you don't like Hey BMW, you'll be able to change the assistant's name to anything you want, and BMW says that the assistant is designed to learn about your preferences over time. It can pick up on routines and habits, allowing users to simply say, "Hey BMW, take me home. Country roads, take me home. To the place." No, I'm kidding. But it does show that BMW take me home, and it will be able to navigate you and know where home actually is. They said that additionally, simple statements like "Hey BMW, I'm cold," or "Hey BMW, I'm tired," will lead the assistant to adjust the settings like temperature, lighting, and music accordingly. I'm guessing that obviously if you say "I'm cold," it's going to turn up the heat. If you say "I'm tired," it's going to turn up the music a bit. It's going to turn on some lights. It's going to try to wake you up a little bit. Users can also ask the assistant about various aspects of the vehicle, which I think this part's the coolest part, such as how the automatic high beams work, if the oil level is sufficient, or whether there are any current warnings. Drivers can also give it access to their calendars in order to receive updates about when they should leave for their scheduled appointment. In the future, BMW says that the assistant will also be able to alert drivers to potential issues like the tire pressure being low. So in the future, it's going to do all this. Share fuel-saving tips and arrange appointments with a service center. Obviously, those run by BMW. BMW and their voice assistant sounds like a very good integration to other BMW services, which is going to be key for BMW to, of course, make more money off of you. I think it's a pretty cool way. I do like digital assistants. I don't see any reason why this shouldn't be the next step. It's just how self-serving is BMW going to make their own personal digital assistant, as opposed to porting in something like Alexa. Of course, Alexa and Google and Apple and Microsoft, all of their digital assistants are just as self-serving. I hope to see some integration with the others. I hope that BMW doesn't lose sight on why a digital assistant would be good. And I'm excited to see what BMW actually comes out with. So you can check that out there. A link to that in the show notes. We have like a minute here before we're going to go off into break. And how about this one? We'll try to touch on this one real quick, and then we'll come back to some others. You may have already heard the news. This one was from yesterday, but I found this very interesting. Uber will suspend low-rated riders in Australia and New Zealand. So this has been a practice for a while now. If you are rated lower than like 4 stars or 4.5 stars as a driver in Uber, Uber knows that people don't rate people on like a 3-star system. It's a 5-star system, and you start out with 5, and if you do anything wrong, they start deducting stars. So they assume if you have less than a 4 rating, then you must be doing something really bad. Everyone, the music means we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. More Computer America as we wrap up this article on Uber and a lot more computer and technology news. Everyone, stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. That's 800-215-4461.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
Welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 32 minutes past the hour as we continue on here. And yeah, let's go ahead and continue on with computer and technology news. If you're just joining us, thank you for tuning into Computer America. Whether you're listening on IRN or you're listening to the podcast or you are watching our live video stream, however you check out Computer America, we thank you for that. Oh, also, hi YouTube people as well. We upload all the videos to there as well. So right before the break, we were discussing this article about Uber. And how I don't know if these are related. There's probably a lot of nuance, but Uber is taking the very drastic step that if you're a driver and you are scored lower than 4 stars as a driver, you are not allowed to use the app to make money. You're just not allowed onto the platform. They assume that you're doing something very, very wrong. You're rude. You're a bad driver. Something is going wrong, and they don't want you there if you get less than 4 stars. This is the first time that I have seen Uber say that if you have less than 4 stars as a rider, as someone who pays Uber, and by extension, it's drivers, they say, we don't care about your money. We don't care about your business. There's something wrong with you. Get the heck out. And yeah, like I said, this is the first time I've heard this. Only in Australia and New Zealand later this month. saying that Uber ratings are out of 5 stars, and passengers in these countries with ratings of 4 or lower will be banned from the service for 6 months. Essentially saying, take a time out, consider your life without us, and then come back and be a better person. They said that the general manager of Uber in Australia and New Zealand told the Sydney Morning Herald that riders would need to receive multiple 1-star reviews in order to have a rating below 4.0. A spokesperson told the BBC only a few thousand customers in the region had ratings that low, and that the policy is aimed at improving some passengers' behavior, and riders will receive multiple warnings as well as tips and reminders of what not to do before being issued a suspension. And by the way, this applies to everyone out there in every situation that you go through, folks. Life is short. Please be nice to one another. Here we go. Uber's tips on how not to receive a 1-star. Be polite, be considerate, take your rubbish with you, and don't make messes in the car. Words to live by. They said that the new policy will go into effect September 19th. One thing that's always made it very easy for me to follow those steps whenever I do use ride-sharing services is that in a lot of cases, these cars are actual people's cars. It's not something that you feel like you're renting someone else's car, so it's not that big a deal. No, these are their everyday cars, and they're just happen to use them to, earn some money. And if you're just going to litter in there, if you're just going to be a rude individual, why did you bother to take them? So it's I kind of like the policy. I don't know how much it goes into some of the problems that New Zealand and Australia seem to have. New Zealand in particular, we've had a number of Kiwis here on the show. I will say none of them were drunk here on the show, but as I understand it, and I could look up these statistics to back up what I'm just kind of saying ad lib, New Zealand has a drinking problem. No offense, I'm sure you can all hold your liquor just fine, but New Zealand has a drinking problem. Per capita, they are way more drunk than the Irish, and that's a harmful stereotype, but you know what I mean. It's something that they were definitely tackling. They have advertisements everywhere. They really see it as a public health crisis, and they're working on it. But trust me, I think that a lot of people would agree the worst riders are those who are drunk. So I don't know if the two are related, but just throwing it out there. Be kind, be considerate, take your rubbish with you. Don't get 1 star. Okay, there's that story. Let's go ahead, switch topics, switch it up here a little bit before I get all the hate mail from the New Zealanders who I guess I kind of insinuated that they're all drunk. Let's discuss. Hey, you might have heard about this company, IBM. You may think that they were big back in the day, but turns out they just kind of left the consumer space, and now they're working directly with law enforcement, with government agencies, with large companies. IBM is bigger than ever. They're just not in the public eye as much. Hence, this new story. Whether you find it intriguing or scary, I'll leave that up to you. And IBM secretly used New York's closed caption television cameras to train, closed circuit, right? Yeah, CCTV, closed circuit, not closed caption, closed circuit TV cameras to train its surveillance software. That's right. IBM was working on surveillance software, and if you happen to be walking down the street of New York, hey, you were an unwitting test subject. The company developed features like searching for individuals based on age, gender, and skin tone. Interesting. And this is an article from The Verge saying that IBM secretly used footage from the New York Police Department's CCTV cameras to develop surveillance technology that could search for individuals based on bodily characteristics like age and skin tone. This is according to a report from The Intercept that cites confidential company documents as well as interviews with former IBM researchers and New York Police Department officials. pretty close ties. And you can see where New York City would have a very big vested interest in making sure that they are able to identify individuals based on a rough description. New York City, unfortunately, is a very big target when it comes to New York City is a very big target when it comes to terrorism. And if you have a general idea of what the person looks like, instead of relying on a computer to say this is the person, they can also flag every individual that matches a generalized description and potentially, kind of act a lot faster to catch, numerous people as opposed to just a single individual who may be misidentified. Facial recognition technology is not that accurate in today's day and age. Where they said that the extent to which IBM worked with the New York Police Department and the secrecy with which it did so is a worrying example of tech companies partnering with governments to build surveillance systems without public oversight. We already know that this happens. As someone from Florida, and I'm one of millions, Florida has, I think, submitted every single driver's license photo into a facial recognition database. I have no doubt because I own a driver's license, and I, even though I've never broken a law, even though I have never done anything for law enforcement to ever consider Ben Crossman a threat, I know full and well that I am within a government easily searchable facial recognition database. If someone took a picture of my face and they wanted to know who I am, trust me, the government will find out in minutes. And that's kind of the day and age that we live in, saying that the ability of new technology like artificial intelligence to supercharge surveillance has been worrying privacy advocates for years. And not only do we know that such systems can be racially biased, meaning that they're prone to making more errors when identifying individuals with particular skin colors, but there's no clear legislation to regulate their use. As I said before, if you want to see technology used incorrectly, if you want to see technology taken to the nth degree to look at what happens when you use technology for surveillance, watch what's going to happen in China. China is doing it to the extent where they're actually keeping tabs on people based on their ethnic background. If you are part of a very specific ethnic background, they're going to target you and they're going to monitor you continuously. It's already happening, and it's a scary future that we already live in. Let's see. This article's a little long, so we're going to skip around a little bit. They said that the New York Police Department says it never actually used these features, hoping to avoid the suggestion of appearance of any kind of technological racial profiling. And that is what a spokesperson told The Intercept. While tools that featured either racial or skin tone search capabilities were offered to the New York Police Department, they were explicitly declined by the New York Police Department. I feel like if you give them the tool and they decline to use it, I'm betting someone out there accidentally, quote unquote, used it. However, former IBM researcher who said he worked on the New York Police Department worked on the project between 2009 and 2013, claims that this is misleading, saying that we would not have explored the search functionality had the New York Police Department told us we don't want to do that. No company is going to spend money where there's not customer interest, which is kind of what I was getting at. They said that they'll never use it. They said that they didn't use it, even though the option was available. Why would they waste time doing it if that was a function that they explicitly stated, we don't want anything to do with that? Something doesn't add up. Now, the researcher says that a number of IBM researchers involved in the project were worried about the technology's potential misuse. He adds that one of his main objections was the lack of public disclosure around how potentially invasive tools might be deployed, saying that that's where we need to have a conversation. That's exactly why knowledge of this should become more widely available so that we can figure that out. The New York Police Department says it stopped using IBM's technology in 2016. So we know from any kind of timeline, it looks like they were using this between 2009 and 2016. And they said that, let's see. So they said that the IBM would not answer specific questions, but it gave a statement saying that it remains absolutely committed to responsibly advancing new technologies. Essentially, any kind of system that they were working on, either they've changed names, they've switched providers, or they've changed systems, but you can bet that this kind of technology, the ability to identify people out of a crowd, already in use by other countries, by other governments, by other powers, and you can be sure it's still being used in very, very densely populated areas, because that's one thing that they don't want you to do. They don't want people to be lost in the crowd. They want to be able to identify everyone. There you have it. IBM working with them. Whether or not that's a good thing, I think that's what the former security researcher, kind of meant by giving this article and this article being written, was that whether you agree, disagree with how this technology is implemented, there should be that conversation. There should be the idea that we can look at this and go, is this bad? Is this good? That's where we're at. And yeah, I guess we're going to have to go ahead and leave it there, because that level of moral ambiguity, I can come down hard on one side or the other, but that's not going to be the opinion, and that's not going to be what actually happens for law and for a lot of you out there. So there you have that one. Okay, time for like 2 or 3 more stories. How about we talk about some differences that green energy can make? So we talk about wind and solar often here on the show. They're definitely big parts of technology, especially solar. There's a lot of new technology being created as to make solar farms much more economic, much more efficient, and hopefully take these technologies from kind of the experimental, gimmicky kind of phase into, well, yeah, of course we have wind and solar. It's our best bet at sustainable energy. This article from Motherboard, and yeah, wind and solar farms. This is a side effect that I had not really considered, but seems pretty darn cool. Wind and solar farms could make it rain regularly in the Sahara Desert. You've heard of the Sahara Desert? It's a very dry place. There's a lot of sand, as I understand it. Never been there myself, but it's a pretty arid environment. So to consider that wind and solar could potentially cause this to, go back to its former glory of a, I don't want to say it was like a rainforest, but it was something akin to, I want to say like a swamp kind of deal. The point is, there used to be a lot more moisture in the Sahara Desert before it was a desert, and potentially we could see it become that way again, where climate models reveal that the renewable energy project in the Sahara Desert could spark a 2-fold increase in local rainfall, enabling vegetation to take hold. And it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much for this kind of thing to snowball into something that really makes a big difference. Because if you think double the amount of rain, even if it only receives a couple of inches a year, doubling that drastically increases the amount of vegetation and wildlife that can actually survive there. So how is this possible? Let's go ahead and find out. The Sahara Desert is a dream location for renewable energy industries. The same qualities that make it this region so legendary, which include a lot of sun exposure, blustering gales, so a lot of wind, and sparse populations, also distinguish it as an obvious place to develop wind and solar farms. Many ambitious green energy projects are already underway in the desert, including the Sahara Solar Breeder Project, which aims to power half the world from the deserts by 2050. Imagine that. And by half the world, I assume they mean that, that region, Africa, the Middle East, and the Mediterranean. I'm assuming that a lot of the energy is going to go into that area. And like they said, that's a big project, but it's something that the desert is uniquely capable of providing, at least the setting for that. So while the Sahara's potential as a global energy hub has long been recognized, the impacts of such development on a desert environment itself have been mostly overlooked. Well, a postdoctoral researcher in natural resources and environmental sciences at the University of Illinois bridges this gap in the latest issue of Science. Very, very cool. Where the team developed climate models of the temperature, precipitation, and vegetation changes that would result from blanketing 9 million square kilometers, or about 3.5 billion square miles of the Sahara, or about 1% of its area, in solar and wind farms. Now keep in mind, 3.5 million, I believe I said billion, 3.5 million square miles, that's a lot more than what we currently use today as far as solar goes. So this would be a massive increase. This would be a real change. But also, as he points out, only a 0.1% difference in its entire area. He said that Lee and his colleagues found that such a large-scale project would generate over 4 times the amount of electricity as the entire 2017 global energy budget. But the team also noted that the green megaprojects would benefit the region itself by boosting local temperatures, boosting local temperatures, precipitation, and vegetation levels around the farms. So how this would actually happen, I'm sure that they lay it out here in the article. Here's a quote from the author saying that our results obtained from the experiment performed with a climate model suggest that for installations of wind and solar farms with current conversion efficiency in the desert at a scale large enough to power the entire world, the impacts on the regional climates would be beneficial rather than detrimental. Beneficial, obviously, being a very strange term. I think he means beneficial for us because we like, rain, precipitation, vegetation, that kind of thing. Obviously, the landscapes would be changed drastically, whether for better or for worse. That doesn't matter. Changing natural landscapes is always a risky proposition. But they said that this highlights that in addition to avoiding the anthropogenic greenhouse gas emission from fossil fuels and the resulting warming, wind and solar could have other unexpected beneficial climate impacts. They said that in the case of wind farms, the temperature and precipitation spikes are caused by turbine blades tugging warmer air down to the desert surface. And solar farms, meanwhile, make the regions hotter and wetter by reducing the surface albedo, or reflectiveness. Combined, these farms would spark a twofold increase in rainfall, and for now, these scenarios are just simulations, but hopefully, this means that when these projects start to get more traction and they potentially start to move from theoretical to actual practice, they can say, well, what are the environmental impacts going to be? And instead of saying, hey, it's going to ruin everything around it, it's going to say, well, this is actually going to be a good thing for the surrounding wildlife and environments. So pretty darn albedo. All right, perfect. So reducing the surface albedo or reflectiveness. And yeah, again, it's just very, very cool when technology actually works with the environment as opposed to simply against it. We have time for one more article. So let's, actually, we're going to try to squeeze 2 in. So this is one. We've talked about a phone company called Huawei here on the show before. Huawei. They are a Chinese phone manufacturer. They just recently overcame Apple, I believe, as the number 2 smartphone maker in the world. Apple's now number 3, Huawei's now number 2, and I believe Samsung is still number 1 when it comes to smartphone makers. Well, with this title comes, of course, the added level of scrutiny, and that scrutiny does not end up well for Huawei. They said that the phone manufacturer was caught cheating on phone benchmarks. Ooh ah, ooh ah. That's bad. Let's see how they were able to do this, because benchmarks, they really do matter. They show the power of a phone. They show that if you are paying $1,000 for a phone, you're getting $1,000 worth of performance out of that phone. And if you lie, if you cheat, then hey, you're defrauding your customers. You're doing something that is nigh unforgivable in the tech world, and that's giving people something that they didn't pay for. That's a very bad thing. They said that UL Benchmarks, aka the Future Mark team, has delisted Huawei's P20 Pro, P20, Nova 3, and Honor Play from 3D Mark's charts after internal testing and an AnandTech expose showed the device ramping up performance whenever they detected the public version of benchmarking apps. These were not subtle differences either, with results up to 47% higher than they were in private test variants Huawei couldn't catch. So whenever they identified that the phone was being benchmarked by anything public, and the public ones are generally those that are most often used, they become industry standards because they're cheap, they're widely available, and they're well known. So by using the versions that were publicly available, Huawei figured that they were going to catch most of them and be able to up, as I said, performance speed by 47%. And when confronted, Huawei's Wang Chenglu told AnandTech that it wanted to embrace standardized benchmarks that were closer to real-world experiences, and that it was fudging existing benchmark results because others do the same testing. Quote, "It was a common practice in China," Wang said, suggesting that Huawei would lose its sales if it didn't cheat. That is a similar response that we finally got from BMW with its emission scandal. That's the same response that we got with other malware companies when it came to definitions. It's such a common response. I hate hearing it. I hate hearing that we had to cheat because if we didn't cheat, everyone else was going to cheat and we were going to be left behind. That's such a cowardly way to do it, and really should be a wake-up call for people who run these benchmarks to take a double check every other phone manufacturer, including Apple, including Samsung, because if you just don't have those benchmarks, you don't really have a clear picture of how these phones compare to one another. You simply have to rely on the marketing, and marketing is a lie within itself. The company also told UL that it was planning to offer a speed boosting mode through a future update so that any app could benefit from the same performance boost. They said that not that the company is eliciting much sympathy, it's using the other kids are doing it too excuse that you are used to in grade school. And when Huawei is the second largest smartphone maker on the planet, shouldn't it be setting an example instead of following the herd? If nothing else, you think Huawei would realize that the long-term consequences of being discovered would outweigh the benefits. When we have seen issues such as these pass up or come up before, class action lawsuits are sure to follow. And for Huawei to say, we did it, but so did others, they are opening themselves up to so many lawsuits. They have no idea. And again, these are for their most popular phones available. Pretty crazy. So let's see. And now this makes me relegate those phones to the do not buy list. And yeah, that's exactly what I hope a lot of people take away from this article, is that if they lie on standardized testing to really hide just how good or bad they actually are, don't trust them to make a quality product, because if they did, they would let it ride on its own merits. But that's not what we have. There you go. Got to vote with your wallets. Very well said. And Melter of Snowflakes, thank you for the great commentary. Everyone else out there listening to the Computer America show, thank you for listening. I know that there are lots of you, especially the folks on SoundCloud. Very, very impressive numbers you've been putting up, and we appreciate that. Everyone, that's just about it for us today. If you miss any part of today's show, you can check out computeramerica.com, where you can find the podcast version of the show, which is today's show in its entirety. Be sure to tune in Monday, where again we'll be interviewing a gentleman who was at the at the Madden shooting that happened a little while ago, just a week or two ago, very, very recent. And as we talk about esports, the scenes, and how what's the future of these events. And of course, Monday through Friday, a whole new week of shows next week. Have a great weekend. Thank you for tuning in, and be safe. Do something fun. Tell me about it on Monday. Everyone, have a great weekend. Bye, everyone.